Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, G.I. Joe is the codename for America's daring, highly trained Special Missions Force. Its purpose to defend humanity against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world. But this time they may be outgunned by the power of Energon. Yon podcast crew can be your newfound guides to things and places unseen by most eyes, that you may stumble here and think as thou slumber. And all the comics gonna get new numbers, because the Major Spoilers podcast is in iambic pentameter, and it doth beyond the air.
Welcome to issue 1115 of the Major Spoilers podcast. This week on the show, we talk about the downfall of America, if Cobra has his way. As we talk G.I. Joe, issues 1 through 4 later in the episode. This was maybe poor planning on my part, but no, I say this was perfect planning. Because now it gets all of us to want to figure out what the last two issues or the next two issues of G.I. Joe are all about, because only the first 4 issues of the series have been released. And don't want to spoil anything right now, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to get into that in just a moment. We did this week on the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show talk about French fries. And there's a question that is posed that you can go over to our Discord server and you can jump in the poll of the week. And you can say, well, I like this about French fries. And everybody will applaud your efforts. You hear that, everybody? Applaud the efforts when people go into our Discord server, which you can join for free. And there's awesome people over there. We've had a couple of new people show up in the last day or so. And I'm hoping they're having a fun time. So there you go. If you want to cuss on the Discord server, there's only one way that you can do that. And that is by becoming the #1 participant in our Discord server for the year. No, seriously, we have a ranking. I know people find this weird. We have a ranking of who, it's kind of like your RPG system where the more you post, the more you level up. And so that also increases your rank. And whoever hits that #1 spot at the end of the year, they get curse privileges for the whole year. They can use capital letters without being scolded by the robot overlord. Do you want to curse on the Major Spoilers Discord? Well, you better get over there and join right now. Speaking of cursing, let's do some reviews. And this week is the launch of FML #4 from Kelly Sue DeConnick and David Lopez over at Dark Horse Comics. And I really like this series. I'm sure it's a mini series. If this goes on to a ongoing, I'll be really surprised. But I think there is more being drawn from Kelly Sue DeConnick's real life, being put into this book, especially as you've got an older mother who is a creative who has to deal with teenagers and kids going through changes. Literally, one of her kids has gone through a change and has turned into a hairy monster with horns, a horny, hairy teenager, right? And at the same time, these kids are trying to find their way in the world. They've got their band. They're trying to do cool band things. And at the same time, there's a murder mystery that goes all the way back to when the mother was young and also in a band. And maybe the primary suspect also dies and the kids are implicated in the murder. It's good. I don't know how to describe this. It is not your typical comic book. I think David Lopez really understands how to portray two different points of view in a comic book really, really well, as the art style will bounce back and forth between the mother, Lydia, and her kids, Riley. They're two different points of view as they compare and contrast one another very well. So the art is super well done. The character design is super well done. The fact that this is in a world that allows a big hairy monster of a teenager to walk around with, nary an eye batted is kind of weird, but it's good. If you haven't read FML #4, well, first of all, it's out Wednesday, so I've read it ahead of time. So you haven't read it yet. But if you haven't read FML, unless you're a future person, hello, future person. If you haven't read FML, go pick up all 4 issues. Go get them because it's fun. I don't know if this is something that I would wait for the trade on because I've enjoyed reading this month to month. And I think that, that little bit of time between issues makes the next one that much more exciting. It makes the next step in the story that much, you pay attention to it more because you're just not flipping to the next page to see what comes next. So yeah, I would go and get these as the individual issues. Issue 4 out February 26th, $4.99, not too bad of a price. It's good. I'm giving it 5 slices of meatloaf. I love it a lot. Now, for those of you who've been listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, you know that recently we had Kyle Higgins on the show to talk all about the new Radiant Black issue, and it's here. I read it a month ago, so I completely forgot that it was coming out. It's also very, very good, Matthew. And you had a chance to read it this week as well.
I did. Radiant Black number 31. Is it out tomorrow? I think it's out tomorrow.
Yeah, it's out this week. Yeah, February 26th.
Okay. Beautiful. Oh, wait. What day is it now? I'm from France. Okay. So, yes, Radiant Black number 31 is the beginning of a new arc coming off of the great big giant Catalyst War arc, which was actually remarkable in that it went from issue 25 to issue 30, but somehow was 10 issues long because time travel shenanigans, you guys. Written by Kyle Higgins with art by, what is his name? With the face on his head and the elbow halfway up his arm. You know the guy. Joe Clark is the other writer, Eduardo Ferigato. And this is just kind of a classic rebuilding issue. This is really, really lovely because it starts 5 months after the Radiant War. And my first thought is, everything's going to be cleaned up. Nope. Chicago is still halfway destroyed. They're still rebuilding. There are still chunks of dead robots lying in the streets in certain places. And there's a lot of work to be done. So Marshall, who is now the sole Radiant Black, is focusing on being the best person, the best hero that he can be. Part of that is because he saw an alternate version of himself during the Catalyst War.
Not only did he see it, everybody saw his alternate self.
Yeah, sort of. And at the end of the Catalyst War, the 2 issues, the extra issues that I was referring to are the fact that throughout the Catalyst War storyline, issue 25 took place in one universe, and there was also an issue 25.5 that took place in a separate timeline. One where Marshall was Radiant Black, one where his friend Nathan was Radiant Black. And so in one of those timelines, the universe was destroyed. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one it was, but the comic book is going on, so you do the math. And at the end of the storyline, people from the alternate world were brought to the prime reality by Radiance Yellow and Pink. This is important because those people remember their world's Radiant Black, and they don't necessarily trust him. And the reason why is in the book, and I'm not going to spoil that for you, but it's ugly. And this story kind of rolls through, Marshall has a new job. He's kind of hanging out. Eva, Radiant Pink, is still involved. They're hanging out together. And then he finds a body, and someone sets off a bomb trying to kill him after luring him in with the body. And then somebody says, you may want to Google yourself, because he says all the things that happened, I'm the only one who knew about them. No. And so there are now hundreds of online theories, conspiracy theories, crazy stuff. This is basically, I'm not going to say that it has anything to do with the 17th letter of the alphabet, but I'm also not saying.
Oh, no, it's totally.
Yeah. And there is another player on the scene with some sort of technology, once again, that seems to be powered by the energy of the Radiance, alien tech. And we're not sure who he is, but he does not seem to be Shift or Mecha or any of the other guys that we've seen. And he's also definitely got his sights set on Radiant Black and maybe a few other people that he probably should not. So if you have not been reading Radiant Black, first of all, you haven't been listening to me for about 3 years. Your mother and I are very disappointed in you, and we want to know where you go on Saturday nights. But this is a good place to jump in. And I feel like once you do, you are going to want more Radiant Black. And you can go back and check out those first 30 issues. It's probably the best way I can describe it is it's kind of decompressed storytelling. And I hate to use the phrase done right, but a very satisfying kind of decompressed storytelling in that in some comics, the first 30 issues of Radiant Black would have been a 12-issue arc. In some, it would have been a 6-issue arc. But instead, we got a story that had time to grow, to become incredibly complex, to get really terrifying, and then resolve itself in a very satisfying way, giving us this new start. But of course, as we know, there's no such thing as a new start. There's only new horrors to come and bite you on the face because it's 2025. And if there's not a leopard in every tree, there's certainly not a chicken in every pot. However, 4 slices of meatloaf for Radiant Black number 31.
Only 4? Why didn't you like it?
Really
I would have given that a 5.
What do you mean, why didn't I like it? I liked it a lot.
What? No, I said, what didn't you like about it?
There are things that I find a little bit problematic just in the way the breakdown goes. When we talk about a story, when I talk about, hey, we're going to deconstruct like one of those Peter Parker issues from 1974, where Peter's, he's sick, but he also has to do all of his things, and he has to go and he has to take care of Aunt May, and he has to go to school and he has to pass a test. There's kind of not necessarily a structure that I expect from that story, but there are ways to do that and have these things take place that are designed to go bump, 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 bump. Now, this does get away from several cliches, which I like, but there are a couple of moments in this issue that kind of bug me, and I think they're going somewhere. And I don't want to be too specific because it all does tie into the conspiracy theory, what Marshall did, what Marshall did not do, what another Marshall may have done.
Well, and most importantly, and I think the thing that's driving the villain is how do we know that this Marshall says he's not going to become that Marshall?
Right. And there are those who believe that this Marshall is that Marshall, and then they want to know what happened to their Marshall. And so, yeah, that part is daunting. It could, and I have faith in Higgins that it could go someplace really, really well. Remember, I've been reading Higgins on Power Rangers for several years now. Mm-hmm. Thanks to Steven telling me you have to go read Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Read Power Rangers and figure it out.
Isn't that a surprise? Isn't that a weird turn of twist of fate there where I'm the one telling Matthew to read Power Rangers?
No, the weird part is the twist of fate is that you were right. But more importantly, 4 slices of meatloaf, well above average. Very good book. I enjoy this book. You will enjoy this book. $3.99 from the Image Comics. Definitely.
It really is.
Check it out.
It is intended to be a jumping on point. So if you've not read the previous 30 issues, don't worry about it. They intended for this to be a jumping on point for new readers. Mm-hmm. So it does that very, very well. And if you haven't listened to the Kyle Higgins interview, go back, January sometime, about 4 episodes ago, I believe, 4 or 5 episodes ago, where I interviewed Kyle on the podcast. And we talk about what's coming up and what's going on and what makes this series work. We talk about the dual universe storyline in there. So if that is something that, and I admit, and he admits that we are both not fans of the 0.5 stuff, but he explains his position very, very well. This would be issue 1110 called Kyle Higgins Takes Big Swings. We go into that. And if you want a little bit more, I would really encourage you to go to the Major Spoilers Patreon page, patreon.com/Major Spoilers, because the interview that is in the Major Spoilers podcast episode is only, I think, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. There is an unedited, complete, like hour-and-a-half interview with Kyle where we talk about how Radiant Black is really an extension of his senior thesis film when he was in film school, and everything that ties into that. So it's a much more in-depth interview, and it's really, really good for those of you who are patrons at the silver level or higher. And you may be saying, listen, I'm not going to buy into your whole Patreon for $5 a month. I get it. You can buy the entire interview just by itself for $5 and just listen to the interview if you want. And it's worth the $5. People in our Discord have really, really enjoyed that interview a lot. And if you're a fan of Radiant Black, I think you owe it to yourself to go and check out that full interview over at patreon.com/major spoilers. All right, Rodrigo, it is time for your book, which doesn't come out for another week, but it looks like it is combining a very popular Marvel character with a lesser known New Gods character.
Oh, is it?
No, it's not. It's just Blade Forger #1. Sounds like Forger from New Gods and
what I want to know
Marvel.
is, how do you tell the forged blade from the genuine one? Because is the face of Andrew Jackson slightly warped on the forged blade? Or
Mad Cave Studios.
Yeah. So I've spoken here about solicitations and how often, especially for the first issue, the solicitation gives a lot away.
Yeah.
I would suggest reading this comic before reading the solicitation, because it's not that it gives stuff away, it's that it like fills in a lot of context. This issue, #1 of Blade Forger, by Inaki Miranda and Roy Miranda, is complicated. And it's complicated because it jumps back and forth in time in a single issue like 6 or 7 times. We are introduced to our main character, Owada, who is in the process of fighting a tournament that will potentially make him the new emperor of this region. He is a blade forger, which as either allows him to summon a creature JoJo style, or maybe turns him into that creature. I think it turns him into that creature, but it's actually kind of hard to tell at times. So only forgers can engage in this tournament, and they can all basically turn into some creature because of their cool magic sword, which is the forge. Like a sword is the forge, and people who use them are forgers.
Okay, makes sense.
It might, there's not a lot of time for nuance in this specific issue, again, because we move so much, but maybe there is a thing about these things that they turn into not being real. Maybe that's also why they're forgers, aside from the fact that you forge a sword. So we see him win a fight, and then over the course of basically one single page, we jump 4 years into the future to his final battle with the Emperor. Then in the next page, he beats the Emperor. Then in the next page, we jump to the present, which is a horrible revolution, and his effigy is being torn down, like statues of him are being torn down by protesters. So yeah, there's like a lot going on. It's hard to keep track of it. The ending of it, you see him die, but maybe it's sort of in a simulation type deal, and it lets us know that there's like a secondary prophecy or like timeline. Maybe it's honestly pretty hard to tell. I'm sure next issue will like explain it a little bit more. Again, the solicitation explains that a little bit more. But it's a little tough. It's a little tough to get through. The art is very good. It's very enjoyable. So I would say, this is interesting. It's approaching the storytelling in an unusual way, which is not bad. Like I appreciate a comic that's trying to do something, even if it's not completely successful in doing that from my point of view. Um, I could pretty much follow it, but a lot of the details are hard to parse out because it moves so fast. I'm gonna give it 3.5 slices of meatloaf. Again, this is like above average, obviously. Um, I'm interested to see where it goes and if it's going to maintain this sort of like um, jumping at like 4 simultaneous times in the character's backstory, or if it's gonna like settle into more of a normal narrative. So we'll see. Yeah, it's good times. It's not bad.
Which way do you want it to go? Do you want it to just settle down into its own one storyline, or do you want it to keep jumping back and forth, providing that it adds something to your
Yeah, I would be
understanding of the
okay.
character?
Yeah, I would be okay either way. We've seen lots of stories where um it simultaneously tells a story in the past and the present, right?
Mhm.
So that's not like uh all of the jumps that we see here. Probably like there's only like 2 or 3 that you could really kick off the story from, because some of them like get resolved in this issue. There's a lot of stuff going on in this issue.
Okay.
So I would be okay with maintaining a kind of jumping back and forth between the present and the future, or the present and the past, or whatever, however you want to look at it. And but I would also be okay if it's like, okay, well, that what you saw is like the potential future. Now let's see if that does actually happen with this new information that we have. So I would be okay with it either way.
Okay. All right. In terms of publishers kind of releasing the whole story
Mhm.
early, from the first issue, which has happened a lot.
Yeah.
There are times where, they will send us a press release that says, basically, here's the entire story arc of this book. And then like a week or two later, they're like, hey, can you, take that out? Cause we kind of spoiled a little bit too much. And it's like, yeah, no, I totally understand in that case. But what are your feelings when you see something that kind of spells out the entire plot of the movie? I mean, certainly a lot of trailers today tell you exactly what you're getting into when you before
Yeah.
the movie comes out.
So I don't love it. It's always great to have a little bit more to discover in the movie. I
Mhm.
remember probably the first time that I remember thinking about this was when Lilo and Stitch was going to come out,
Oh yeah.
and they basically put every single joke in the movie in the trailers.
Right.
So like going in, like all of these, moments that should have been funny and surprising were just like, oh yeah, I remember that from the trailer, right?
Mhm.
So it can definitely work against it. This one specifically, it fills up a lot of backstory that the comic doesn't. So it's also weird because it feels like cheating, right?
Yeah.
If it's like okay, well, so it's like the discovery of Corum, a never before seen energy source, led to a bloody world war for its control. Like this is not in the comic. They mention Corum. The lords of the lands agreed to negotiate a ceasefire for last. Not in the comic. None of this is in the comic. Like, this is all backstory that presumably we're gonna maybe get later in the comic.
Mhm.
So I don't know. When it comes to comics, I think I'm a lot more like my thought is that the writers sort of do a pitch,
Yeah.
and then from that pitch they do the solicitations.
Could
So
be.
it's like because this seems like, yeah, here's all the backstory and here's why
Oh,
you should be interested in this.
you know what's missing
Um,
from this? Because we're getting an advanced reader copy, obviously. You know what's
mhm.
missing? Inside front cover.
Oh,
I wonder if some of that stuff isn't explained on the inside front cover.
could be, could be.
Mhm.
Hopefully, yeah, and the other thing is that the final could potentially be different.
Yeah.
They could have more information there, so that could be there. But also, uh, that this information here is not necessary for the actual comic, right? It's only weird because it's like so much info that isn't in the comic, right? Like I wasn't like I was looking at the comic and being like, "Oh, what is happening? What are the rules of this world?" But in like a I'm the audience discovering what's happening and speculating about what's happening, right? Definitely when you're an old comic book person like me, just ancient,
Yeah, the old man.
you when you had to like basically scrounge for comics at the drugstore, like you were picking up issue 37 of something, issue 15 of something, and you had to like be like, well, I don't know who this character is, but Spider-Man sure seems to like him, so presumably they've talked before. So it's not that bad to get an issue where like you don't exactly know what's going on. I think, it adds to the mystery or whatever. It's just weird when the either the solicitation tells you what's going to happen in the future. Like, it's like by the end of the issue, they're like, oh, this person has gone missing, but the solicitation tells you that they're dead and that's going to kick off a manhunt. And you're like, oh, well, great.
Yeah.
Or something like this where it's like the opening crawl of Star Wars, but the opening crawl of Star Wars is not in the movie, right? It's just like, what's going on? So it's not bad. Again, we're talking about this comic. Like, this comic does not need to bear the entire brunt of my ongoing issues with solicitations.
No.
But it's definitely weird. Solicitations, sort of like trailers, are their own little bits of media, right?
Yeah.
And so there's lots of things that you can do about it. There's like fashion that comes into it, right? Like, remember when trailers used to have like a voiceover? Some of them have kind of started doing it again, but not too much. So yeah, who knows? Like, there could be a big changeover in solicitations too, where people are like, okay, well, we absolutely need to do is preserve the mystery, right? So we'll see.
Some do that. Some of them go too far. The ones that really irritate the heck out of me are when Marvel is like, here's Spider-Man issue 72 coming out in May of 2025. And it's like, hey, here's the writer. Well, we know who the writer is because they've been the ongoing writer for this series.
Yeah.
Here's the artist. Same thing, ongoing artist. And then everything else. Top secret, we cannot reveal. And then they don't even send you the cover. It's just, a top secret cover with the words a black image with top secret on it. I hate it when publishers do that. Marvel is probably the most egregious of that. And they haven't done it as much recently, but still sometimes I'll get to it and it's just like, this issue is so shocking, you won't believe it. And the idea behind the solicitation is we want to entice you to buy this comic. And for Marvel, a lot of the times when they do these top secret things, it's because it's tied into a company-wide event. And so they're trying to just the allure of something so shocking that you're going to want to pre-order this issue, now. I can get that. But then there's smaller publishers like Mad Cave, and they're not a small publisher, but they're not the big two, where maybe they do need a little bit more enticing
they have to
get
sell
you to come
on
into
it
the
a
club.
little bit more. Yeah. No, that's fair. They don't have the history that Marvel and DC does. But you know what's I forget what I was watching recently, but I was watching something on streaming and all the episode descriptions were like that because it was like a show with a mystery or something. I don't remember. Maybe it was Blue Eye Samurai, but it might not have been, where like all of the descriptions were like a new enemy reveals himself and like
maybe you've been reading the critical hit teasers that I've been doing. The company arrives in Helsinki.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's like our heroes discover a new plot, and it's like, okay, you can maybe tell us a little bit more. And I get it. It's like a big deal that a character dies in episode 3. And so episode 4, which is already out, right? Because they're all already out, would like the description for it would spoil that. So from here on out, we have like these rolling, like nebulous descriptions because things keep happening in the show that are interesting and surprising, but they can't spill them, right? So like the last episode is like the final battle is joined. Will something?
Yeah. And in some cases, because of the way screeners work for television shows, I've already got the solicitations for like Severance episodes 6 and 7.
Sure.
Because that's the screeners that Apple was sending out and saying, hey, coming up in this. And it's like, oh, maybe I'm not sharing this because that may be revealing a little bit too much. So it may be in those cases where they want to limit what that solicitation information says because people have like 6 issues ahead or 6 episodes ahead or whatever. And that stuff becomes public fairly quickly by the time that the first episode launched. So it's a tricky, I do not, all the PR people that we work with and all the editors that have to write these things, my hat is off to them because it is that tricky line of where does the teaser end and the spoiler begin and how much is too much. And so, my hat's off to them in having to deal with this tricky world.
Yeah. I think collectively, like movie nerds and people who like, commercials and people that in the atmosphere have finally really gained an appreciation for a good trailer, that teases you but doesn't give away too much, that makes you interested in blah blah blah. So maybe we're walking towards a place where like the ultimate solicitation is coming soon, and everybody's going to be like, oh man, we all need to write it this way at least for a while.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Movies are trying to do that, but a lot of the times, even those trailers are dictated by studio execs that are
right,
hey,
absolutely.
people are only going to come to this movie if they know exactly what it's about. And so we've got to put as much information in there. And there's some that are just, I think, very well done. I'm trying to think of one that I saw recently that I was like, that trailer is pretty trippy. And now I want to know more. Certainly wasn't Andor season 2.
Yeah, I was very interested in the the Wolfman movie came out and didn't do very well.
Oh yeah.
When I saw the trailer for that, I was like, that's a pretty good trailer. It shows you some spooky stuff, but it doesn't give away everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the last trailer where I actively thought there's a pretty good trailer.
Matthew, is there a recent trailer that you thought was a pretty good trailer that didn't give away too much? And
I don't know that I've seen a trailer in years.
Okay.
I feel like I did see the Thunderbolts trailer. Both on the what do you call it? The Superb Owl.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that one definitely was like, okay, I know what they're doing here. But yeah, I don't necessarily go to theaters. I try to avoid them. Honestly, when I see trailers is when you say, hey, we're going to talk about a trailer on the show.
Yeah.
So I just kind of try and look at them and go, oh. But yeah, trailers haven't been the same since De La Fontaine died, as far as I'm concerned. Don De La Fontaine in a world. But yeah, you're right. Everything's bad.
I mean, doesn't happen.
There's definitely there's some trends that I don't like. I feel like we're finally starting to move away from the Inception Bwang, right?
Yeah.
Bwang.
Where anytime something happens in the trailer, it's like, okay, all right, calm down.
I will say that there was a very successful trailer recently, and I finally saw the film this weekend. The trailer that I saw for Companion.
Yeah.
Which is literally just well,
a little bit more than that, but that's a twist. It's not in the trailer, and I'm really? Because that's literally in the description of the movie.
I'm aware.
Yeah,
but the trailer is just a scene where a woman walks into a discussion where her friends are there, covered in blood, holding a knife, and she says, "I didn't mean to." Companion opening blood, and nice. I'm like, okay,
that is a good trailer.
That is a great trailer because it does give me the central crux of the problem. And I had managed to either forget that you spoilered it for me or to block out actively. Because when I watched it, I was like, okay, this is an interesting movie. And then I started picking up on the things that were, hinting at the thing and the thing and the thing. And I'm like, these are clever hints towards the thing and the thing and the thing.
Yeah, no, so it's so this is the thing, right? So you see the trailer and you're right. That is an excellent trailer, right? But if you literally just search for the companion, the literal description like you would see in TV Guide.
Why I don't search
movies. So spoiler alert, people. A weekend getaway turns bloody and violent when a subservient android that's built for human companionship goes haywire.
Mm-hmm. The
And
first third of the film is designed to hide that. So I kind of feel like
that's
and
that's
that's
a perfect
weird.
example of
That's
what we're
the same.
complaining about.
That's the same deal with solicitations a lot of the time. It's like, to give you an overview, like very often, like so often, issue 1 of a comic is setup, right? It's like it's like the first few minutes of a film. They show you the normal world that these characters are in before their world is turned upside down. And that's the end of that first issue, right?
Yep.
So it's like, if you read the solicitation, it already spoils that first issue. You're not surprised when all of a sudden the android goes haywire, or the first kaiju appears, or you realize that you've actually been hanging out with a very affable vampire the whole time. Like, you know that stuff going in if you read the solicitation. So it takes away from that first issue, and maybe, second, third issue or whatever is there, but you lose that surprise. And both with trailers and with comics, it always sucks.
It does.
When the movie is trying to be coy, right? It's trying to be like, oh, maybe something is happening. You're like, I already know she's a robot. It's like, oh, now here's another thing. I already know she's a robot, right? Like, I think as a filmmaker, as a film reviewer, you can appreciate what they're doing and think to yourself, yes, if I didn't already know the twist, this would actually be very good. For example, I've seen the Sixth Sense a lot, especially because I've ended up seeing it at work a bunch of times, and it's really, it's given me an appreciation for the movie where I'm like, even if you don't know the twist, this is a good movie,
right?
Like everything that happens is interesting, like it's very well done or whatever.
The twist is that that's not a Die Hard sequel. I watched that whole thing waiting to hear Yippee-ki-yay. Didn't happen.
Yeah, the twist is that Haley Joel Osment has actually been living in the present this whole time, and and something about an elevator.
Yeah. Dear listeners, you can weigh in on these this conversation, the solicitations, trailers, etc. Do you want everything given away, or do you want a lot of mystery and people talking about, what was that thing on The Simpsons? Jacko? No. When the puppet came in to steal Krusty the Clown's Gabbo. What is Gabbo? Gabbo. And everyone's talking about what is Gabbo, and it turns out just to be this ventriloquist dummy that's coming in to take Krusty's job.
Show.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you prefer the Gabbo?
When are we going to get to the fireworks factory?
Do you prefer the Gabbo, or do you prefer Godzilla invades Tokyo? You want it spoiled for you. Let us know over on our Discord server. That's right. Join that Discord server absolutely free. Talked about it earlier. And in the meantime, if you want to hear us talk about some French fry action, or you want to hear us talk about the fashions that were forced upon us in the 80s, then you want to check out the Major Spoilers Podcast pre-show. That's right. Silver level and higher. $5 a month. $5. It's $5. It's not that much. It's less than the cost of going into New York City during congestion time to go and listen to hundreds of hours of bonus material that you can get at patreon.com/major spoilers. Yes, we will bring back the horrors of your fashions that you had to live through back in the 80s. Patreon.com/major spoilers. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Speaking of the 80s, we are wrapping up our look at the Energon Universe with a look at the first 4 issues of G.I. Joe. Not G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. That's the ongoing series, also at Skybound Entertainment by Larry Hama. We are talking about the new G.I. Joe series from Joshua Williamson, Tom Riley, and Jordi Belair. The first 4 issues have been released of this. The 4th issue arrived last week, so you can go and get the 4 issues and see what's going on. We are at a point where everything from all the trades that we have been reading culminate into the Joes are active. They're not the best group of Joes, They are assigned to go protect a transformer part, which I believe may be Megatron's finger. And Cobra attacks, and G.I. Joe is utterly defeated. And they're trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what they're going to do next. Meanwhile, Cobra wants to take over the world by controlling everyone's minds. So what do you think of everything culminating here with this? Again, we don't have the whole story because it's the first 4 issues.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts?
I'm honestly impressed. When we announced this, I really did not know what we were going to get because I was not necessarily the biggest fan of the Hasbro extended universe that we got at IDW, which tied together all of the Hasbro properties. But
I think the only one that never got tied in, which I'm really surprised on, was Transformers and Dungeons and Dragons. I do not think that there was a Transformers D&D crossover. There was Transformers Ghostbusters, Transformers My Little Pony, Transformers G.I. Joe.
Magic too.
Oh yeah, Magic. But I think at the time Boom was doing the Magic comic. Yeah. But definitely IDW had Dungeons and Dragons. But Matthew doesn't like that stuff. So please go on.
What do you mean I don't like that stuff?
You said you didn't necessarily care for what Hasbro was doing with their
27 years
with their crossover stuff.
It didn't necessarily sing to me. No, I liked the part of it that was crazy and people hated it. So, that tells you probably about as much as you need to know about me. But I feel like the build here from story to story and the expectation, we start with the big Void Ravos thing and we have all the do. And it's like, oh, alien warriors in space and doing the thing. And turns out that this is an alien war that we know. And then it kind of leads us back to Earth. And then the alien war starts off and starts kicking Cobra into gear. And then we see Cobra mobilizing for what, three series worth before we ever see the G.I. Joes doing anything. We do see Duke get his face caved in and, poor Duke, but what are you going to do? And then by the time we get to issue 1 of G.I. Joe, I don't necessarily want to say that it feels more earned than previous, but something in that sort of realm where it feels like this is happening organically in a storytelling world because it has to now. We've got all these evil things happening, and so we now have to have something to try and counter that.
So there was a time 20 years ago when there was a movie that came out, and then at the end of that movie, a person showed up and said, I want to talk to you about this Avengers Initiative. And then this next movie came out, and it was also part of that universe and tied in. And you were like, there's no way that they can do this across all these movies and TV shows. And they did. I mean, the Avengers and everything that happened came out that way. This whole thing that we've done for the last 2 months is very much following that same pattern, right? Where let's introduce you to this title. And then you go over and you read this title and they're connected because there's a cameo and these stories are tied together. And then it just keeps building that way to this. So I agree with you that this feels very earned, but it suddenly occurs to me when you're talking about it that this is very much, we're doing this Avengers continuity that will span 20 years and 20 movies. Yeah, interesting. Rodrigo, what did you think of this big buildup?
Well, it was interesting. I kind of feel like they went to Hasbro and were like, we're going to do this big thing with multiple properties. It's going to feature these new guys and the Transformers and G.I. Joe. But like secretly, they just wanted to write a G.I. Joe comic. Because I think it's funny that it's like, what are the titles in that we've read, right? It's like Void Rivals, Transformers, and then like 5 different individual G.I. Joe comics. And it's like, not even a single Transformer gets their own comic.
Well, I mean, Transformers do have their own comic series.
Yeah, but
but yes, there is not a there's not a Megatron.
Scarlet
Yeah,
got
you're
her
right.
own series.
Right.
Duke
Yeah,
got his own
there's not a Megatron. There's not a
yeah.
Bumblebee. Bumblebee doesn't
Like
last.
you could definitely just cheat that in any way you wanted and have a Transformer be off by themselves.
Yeah.
But like I really feel like the point of view here is from G.I. Joe, right? It's like G.I. Joe is people, and we're supposed to care mostly about G.I. Joe, and the Transformers, have their own stuff going on. And I don't think we've even looped around to the people out in space.
No, and that was the thing that's kind of weird about this, because Void Rifles is ongoing, and from what I gather, it is dealing more with Cybertron and whatever's going on with our heroes and the portal and the black hole and all that. And then Transformers has been ongoing as well, to where now apparently, is it 2 weeks ago, or maybe it's this week or next week? It's revealed that there's a huge battle going on in Seattle between the Decepticons and the Autobots. And so, that has all been ongoing, while you're right. We have been wanting to just tell a kick-ass G.I. Joe property, or tale, story, issue. Yeah. It feels like there may have been some mandates to build up to the G.I. Joe. I wonder if that was the case, because Void Rivals is doing its own thing. Robert Kirkman's doing his own thing. Transformers, I think Joshua Williamson is writing that one, so he gets to do what he wants there. But G.I. Joe, it feels like we need that build up to understand who all these people are and their motivations. Because quite honestly, didn't get to watch a lot of G.I. Joe growing up, but I understand the powers at play after reading all of these trades than if we would have been just jumped into G.I. Joe #1.
Yeah, these stories are pretty good, but we didn't spend a bunch of time talking about what happened in Cybertron, right? It's like we just jump right into Transformers #1 after getting a little teaser in Void Rivals. This didn't have to happen. I think Joshua Williamson wanted to write this big epic G.I. Joe series, and it's like the other way around, right? It's like, okay, I got this great idea for G.I. Joe. It's like, okay, well, it better have some Transformers. It's like, okay, we'll figure out a way to put Transformers in it. Because it's good. It's like I have a hard time, maybe Williamson is just very good, but it's like if somebody comes that, if I was like, oh, I got a great idea for a Transformers series, and somebody's like, well, this better have 20 different comics specifically about G.I. Joe, I would be like, okay, pass. I'm not doing this. It's like, yeah, because I'm not that familiar with G.I. Joe. I don't like G.I. Joe as much as I like Transformers. If they were you get do one G.I. Joe story along with the Transformers, I'd be like, sure. But it's like just the loving care that we've gotten to introduce the weird swamp rednecks, and then having them show up again here with the little Cobra vests and stuff. It's like, yeah, this is very much a culmination of everything that's happened. And it's funny that it's the culmination of everything that's happened. This was all kicked off because the Transformers showed up, and we see 2 Transformers in this. One is a blurry picture of Optimus Prime, and the other is a dark shadow of Megatron, smiling, your classic anime
evil
villain.
Megatron.
Yeah. So it's it's funny. It's funny that very clearly it's all been leading up to G.I. Joe. And this is kind of the culmination of that. And it feels good. Again, all of these are very readable. I was actually surprised that some new characters got introduced into the G.I. Joe. I was like, well, we followed all of these characters. And then definitely CoverGirl we hadn't seen before. And I feel like Rock and Roll. Did you see Rock and Roll before?
Rock and Roll was there before.
CoverGirl in the Duke.
Oh, I don't remember CoverGirl. I don't remember CoverGirl, because I was like, we got introduced to
CoverGirl was
the Baroness in
assistant.
There. Oh, okay.
They called her Courtney, Officer Krieger, but CoverGirl was there. Rock and Roll and Stalker were the guys that Hawk called in to bring Duke down.
Yeah.
When Duke went on the run and hit out with Clutch.
Right. Okay. I got confused, and I bet you this is where they killed Rock and Roll. Spoiler alert. It's because his beard makes him look too much like Snow Job. Like we can't have two beardy guys in the GI Joe. So, and we're gonna like Snow Job's already out doing stuff, right?
Right, he's out there. He was in Scarlet.
Yeah, he was in Scarlet. So we're like, okay, we can't have. And actually, I thought they were the same person
That's
until
what I thought too.
Yeah, so until I was like, oh, no, these are two different characters. And I bet you that's where they killed Rock and Roll.
Do you think because that was a first issue murder, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if that wasn't for the shock value, because this character, Rock and Roll Matthew, is he like beloved
he's
character? Rock and Roll is gone now.
Rock and Roll
the
is
fans are going to be
original.
mad.
Yeah, he's one of the original 13 Joes. Rock and Roll was one of the guys back in the day. He was in issue 1 back in 82. So I don't know if people are going to be mad, but it's definitely a nobody is safe move.
Sure.
Well, and so
like,
that's
if you're willing to kill him, you can kill Clutch, you can kill
you can kill anybody. Yeah, no, that's so. Again, one of my big complaints about GI Joe was always, the plane blows up and then a parachute opens, so you know that nobody died. And even that was the thing that saddened me the most about the first season of Legend of Korra. I'm still bitter about that, right?
Right.
Where Rodrigo literally witnessed my disappointment in real time.
Yeah, Steven's rage.
When that happened, I was just so disappointed in that. So that's what I did like about not necessarily just killing off a beloved character, but killing off a character that people know really well, because it does say parachutes aren't opening when an airplane blows up. And I like that. Not that I think senseless violence and killing is cool or great, but that there are stakes in everything that they do going forward, I think makes the story a little bit more interesting and makes me more invested in the story, because I got to keep reading to see, when does Snake Eyes show up? I got to keep reading to see, when does the Baroness turn? I got to keep reading to see, is the other bearded guy also going to die? Is he going to get thrown in the pit of snakes? I forget who the other bearded guy is that they thought was dead. Oh, Snow Job, missing in action, right.
No, that's Clutch. Clutch was missing in action.
Clutch is missing in action.
Clutch is hiding out as one of the Vipers.
Yeah, no,
I will say that I do appreciate that about G.I. Joe, is that I'm bad at remembering people's names, but if everybody has code names, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, plus, whatever their code name was in the cartoon, that was pretty much what their outfit was. So if you just looked at their outfit and you said, this guy looks like a wrestler, he looks like Sergeant Slaughter from the wrestling show. Yep, guess what? That's that guy's name, Sergeant Slaughter. You think Sergeant Slaughter's ever going to show up in this?
No, they don't own the rights anymore.
You know what we should have? I wish somebody had like a counter of how many issues of the Energon Universe have come out, and we still haven't seen Snake Eyes.
Yep, where's our man Snake Eyes?
Yep.
So if he looks like a Navy guy, his name's probably Shipwreck.
Sure.
Unless he's the other Navy guy, he could be Cutter. Cutter's a different guy. Cutter wears a Boston Red Sox cap, though.
I mean, there's only 4 branches of the military, so they're going to start doubling up at some point.
And in the original Joes, there were only actually 5 molds. There were 3 guys, Scarlet and Snake Eyes. Well, that's not true. I guess Stalker had a unique mold as well. But Rock and Roll, Clutch, and Breaker are the same figure, palette swapped, with different accessories. And then Short Fuse, Hawk, and what's his face with the head and the face and the thing,
Duke?
Zap.
Oh.
No, Duke is the second wave figure.
Right.
Duke actually came out in 85. I should know that. I'm going to get thrown out of the fandom. And then you have Grunt and Zap and Grand Slam, who all have the same head, and they're all chubby. Steeler, thank you. Steeler is the third guy with the square jaw. Okay,
you're welcome.
Don't. I'm going to get fired.
Yep. So this is what we know at San Diego Comic-Con 2024. They said he will not be appearing anytime soon. Fans think that means 2026 at the earliest, after they've gotten a couple of story arcs underneath them. For people that were thinking that Risk was Snake Eyes, They say that maybe not. They're not giving away anything on that. He said, if you look at how we've introduced the characters in the Energon universe, none of them have been a
new
massive.
character?
Risk is the guy who fought Duke for 2 issues.
No. I know who he is in this. I'm asking if he's a brand new character to the G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool. Cool. I'm glad they're also introducing new characters, right? I like it. And I like Risk, actually.
Yeah.
I don't, and that's the thing is like, you don't know where he's going to end up. Like, it's like right now the Baroness is in G.I. Joe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, eventually, probably she's going to end up in Cobra.
What if he grows up to be Zartan? Whoa.
So he says, if you look at how we've introduced the characters in the Energon universe, none of them have been a massive departure from who they are at their core. Whenever we talk about bringing a character into the books, the first thing I do is grab the original file cards and start there.
Nice.
It's
like you got to make sure that this guy has 5 points of weapons use and 3 points of toughness.
Make sure he has a kung fu grip.
Yeah.
Steven.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
No.
Look at those action cards. 14 points of articulation.
No.
Yes. Got to go back to the roots.
War between the kung fu grip guys and the 3 3/4 inch guys is an ongoing G.I. Joe war. You want to step into that.
Good. Also out this week, the latest G.I. Joe, I think it's 318 or something, by Larry Hama. So it's really, that's the one thing that I think can confuse people is everything that we have read is in this Energon universe, and they do try to brand it Energon Universe. But Skybound also has the ongoing G.I. Joe Larry Hama series, which, like I said, is up to issue 300 something out this week with the latest issue. And so I oftentimes, because I'm getting sent all of this solicitation information, I often myself got confused on, wait a minute, is this all tied into the Larry Hama stuff or not? And then, we've got these series of one-shots that are homages to that Snake Eyes silent issue that are coming out that are not part of the Larry Hama stuff, but are definitely part of the Energon stuff. So it's like, I fear that running these two side by side and so close to one another, like I said, I'm looking here right now to try to find out exactly which G.I. Joe Real American Hero 314 is out this week. And last week was G.I. Joe number 4. I really wonder if there's anyone who could potentially get confused on this. And because the universes are so different, just walk away confused.
I feel like in the year of our Lord, everything is a multiverse, including the Warner Brothers cartoons. I feel like fans and, even casual viewers kind of have a feel for, multiverse. The last 3 Marvel films have been multiverse films. Here's 3 Spider-Mans. They come from different universes. Okay.
Honestly, have you guys seen the brand new, like, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man?
I have watched one episode of that. I haven't seen anything else.
Is it good?
Yeah. It's
fair enough.
Very interesting, but it also implies multiverse stuff pretty much right off the bat.
Yeah.
We'll get our crossover sooner rather than.
Yeah, I would have, instead of having them a week apart, maybe 2 weeks apart in the release. Because, somebody could come in thinking they're getting G.I. Joe number 4 and go, hey, my good comic shop man, as they give him the Shooter McGavin, give me the latest G.I. Joe. And the guy slips in the 314 instead of the 4, because technically it's the newest issue. I don't know. It's just something that I would have probably, and certainly the fact that this series is called G.I. Joe and the other one is G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, should tell you these two don't cross. But I bet there's somebody out there that's already confused.
Yeah,
like decades of nerds have walked into a comic shop, asked for the next Batman, and gotten a different Batman than they were reading, or Spider-Man,
or Justice League,
or X-Men,
or Avengers.
Yep.
Yeah. So was there? And again, we don't know how this resolves, but I thought that what we've built up to the 4 issues has been really, really good. I do want to pick up issue 5 and 6.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that probably my biggest complaint about these 4 issues is not the place where it breaks to necessarily. It's maybe the time, the amount of time that takes place in between issues, like the issue 2 to issue 3 break, where something's going on with Clutch and a bunch of stuff happens and a guy gets fed to the Sharkticons and eaten. And then we cut back to headquarters and Duke and Risk are still, to coin a phrase, risking it out. No, wait, it'd be better the other way. Anyway, they're fighting. And that moment to me was like, wait, how long was Luke on Dagobah?
I guess he wasn't there that long.
Yeah.
Like
But
they
also-
turn around. Like honestly, I think it's because of that. It's so that the timing works out.
Mhm.
Like it's like they go and they have one mission and Cobra beats them, and then like they immediately turn around and Cobra's like, okay, well, now we need to go do this like right now.
Mhm.
And they go like they immediately go on other issues like Stalker like pops his stitches in the middle of like the second
the
mission
fight. Yeah,
because they just got their butts handed to them right before
Mhm.
getting their butts handed to them again.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Stalker is also, they're like, Stalker should be out of action for several episodes.
Yeah,
And then he's like, nope.
yeah, he's just immediately back. That's
Because
Stalker.
what do they got? Like 7 members of the team, and 2 of them one's dead, one's missing in action, and so there's only like 5 of them. And then
Well,
they
and
have
at
to
least
split
one
the
of them
party.
is like completely mauled. I forget
Yeah.
which one.
CoverGirl has serious
burns all over her body because
Stalker is badly wounded. The Baroness is baronessing.
just
So
angry.
there's Duke.
Oh, speaking of,
Wrong.
okay, so I wondered if this was going to come up. Baroness clearly speaks Russian in this
Yeah.
issue, and what's his name? Oh, please tell
Stalker.
me I didn't already delete this.
Mhm.
Stalker replies, "Crap." I
ran
actually
it through
used
Translate.
I ran it through Google Translate, or not Google
Mhm.
Translate, but Translate on my phone to have it say what happened. And basically, oh man, I can't believe I screen captured that and then deleted it. Let me see if it's still over here. No, crap. Oh, okay, here it is. She says something and he says, "Try it, and I'll not only kick your ass, I'll drag you back to your mother and father and show them how their little princess turned into an empty life. They brought you into this world, so maybe they'll do us all a favor and take you away."
Stalker does not play. He also speaks 15 languages. I do like Stalker.
And so her reaction is, "What? How?" So yeah, so that is
Gotta
that's
love
the
a
translation.
polyglot.
Yeah.
So
Stalker's pretty cool.
bottom line on the first 4 issues of G.I. Joe, I really enjoyed it. I liked it. I think the writing is still way up there. I need to see how this first arc ends, and I think I'm probably in for 12 issues on this. And I probably am going to go back and get caught up. I don't know so much on Void Rivals, even though I do enjoy, that Romeo Juliet, that we've been lied to. Also, what's going on in Cybertron? Yeah, that Cybertron story is probably spilling out there, but I really, really want to go catch up on the Transformers series. So I think through reading all of this, I think I'm a convert to this new Energon Universe. So that's my thoughts. Rodrigo, final thoughts.
Man, it takes a lot to make me like G.I. Joe. Like, G.I. Joe was the cartoon that I sat through so that I could watch other cartoons, because in my house, if you stopped watching TV was over. So I was like, okay, well, between Scooby-Doo and Transformers, I got to watch G.I. Joe. But again, at its worst, I've said this before about all of these, at its worst, it's completely readable. Well-paced, entertaining characters, great art. Like, if you've ever wanted to get into G.I. Joe, this is absolutely the comic to jump in on.
Yeah.
Maybe not specifically this one. You might want to read all of the ones that lead up to it. But I think it's good. I think it's really solid.
Yeah. Matthew, final thoughts from you?
Any take on G.I. Joe that manages to get you, Stephen, I think that should be the selling point for people. This is the G.I. Joe for people who not only don't necessarily know G.I. Joe, don't have any interest in G.I.
Yeah,
Joe,
because I'll be honest,
actively dislike G.I. Joe.
I don't actively dislike G.I. Joe, but I have zero interest. And again, nothing against Larry Hama, but I have zero interest in picking up G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. I really don't care for reading that series. But this one, something about this, I want to read.
And I think that is the selling point. This is the book that has taken G.I. Joe with 40 years of backstory, 40 years of the lore that the kids talk about today. And you have all of that kind of delivered to you in a way that excites the reader. It gets you involved. Williamson is really good about making me care about, like, Mercer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy who knows who Mercer is. Do you know exactly how many S words I give about Mercer? It is less than one. But I look at this, and then Mercer shows up and he does some stuff, and I'm like, oh, holy crap. This is really good. This makes me care about Mercer. The only thing, and it is an extremely minor, just a whine on my part, the only complaint that I really have about this is Dr. Venom's real name being Monev, which is Venom spelled backwards.
Yeah.
And even that is a classic comic book thing. That is old school comic book. Otto Octavius turns into Dr. Octopus stuff.
Well, like Tomax and Zaymod, right? It's like, we're still dealing with like comic book characters.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the part that really appeals to me, is that it's a good comic, it's a good G.I. Joe story, and it's a good launch. It's like, that's almost unheard of. I have yet to, with the exception of the 82, which for me is, the Grail, the original. Bought it when I was 11 and was like, I'm going to buy this 14 more times until I'm old. I have it in 3 or 4 different things. I have the big treasury-sized edition, and I got one that's like in a box or something. But when you really break it down, if you love G.I. Joe, this book will work. If you could not give a rat's patootie about G.I. Joe, this book will work for you. If, like Steven, you haven't ever enjoyed G.I. Joe and you don't have any real interest in exploring G.I. Joe, this book will still work for you. And that, I think, is the hardest, one of the hardest things of all.
Yeah, there you go. We'll probably have a longer discussion another time, maybe next week, because next week is a general topic episode. It's not that I have a dislike, an overall dislike, because, God, I grew up with every one of my friends with the action figures, with the cartoon shows, with all of that.
Yeah, we all did.
No, we all didn't.
All us,
and we'll go deeper into that psychotherapy next time on the Major Spoilers podcast. Why? Because we know that you love comics. We do too. We will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, they kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler! What a major spoiler! Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I was Stark Raven, rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast, being shot up in a funny in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.